Welcome into the middle of it. I'm Jeb Hart, joined by Great Pew this morning on this beautiful Thursday, the 22nd. Um, we got an hour show for y'all today. Going to kind of more or less, I believe, most of it kind of be the decompression section with a little bit more of a deep dive on some of the substantive things that were brought up that probably didn't get the depth they deserved. Drake, from your side, I know we talked about Greenland yesterday.
Oh yeah.
And there's been developments since we had that conversation, and I think it's probably worth resetting and focus on what's new,
Yeah,
not like
absolutely.
noise, not noise or outrage or the history alone. The recent development that Greenland has moved from a background issue to a frontline strategic decision very openly and at the highest levels at Davos to people's faces. Um, like Trump made it pretty clear that Greenland is strategically critical,
Yeah.
sits at the center of the Arctic corridor between North America and Europe, and at a moment when the Arctic is rapidly militarizing, that both Russia knows it, China knows it, NATO is very well aware. That part is pretty straightforward. No one's really fighting back on that. Trump
hmm
called in his speech in Davos, I mean, in a very Trumpian way by talking a lot of smack, as would be cool to say in the mid 2000s. Um, he called for negotiations, not unilateral action with Denmark, Greenland, and NATO partners. He stated explicitly that we would not use military force. And like we talked about yesterday, that was one of the things that would have been a deal breaker for me as far as the support of it.
Yeah.
And he's pulled that off the table because, and that matters because, if his rhetoric elsewhere has been loose or imprecise as it always kind of is, he's kind of more like a shotgun that just spreads stuff
Yeah.
and people can quote or take things or read into things. It's like, I mean, like Taylor Swift fans like see numbers and like find patterns, and it becomes its own ecosystem in and of itself. But
That's
what
that's a
followed the speech,
that's a whole thing in
what were you
itself.
saying?
The Swifties thing, that's a whole deal in itself.
Oh, I mean, it's like national treasure.
Yeah.
Like the amount of, I mean, like QAnon and that sort of thing, the amount of reading and deciphering and assumptions. It's I'm impressed by what they're doing and the hard work they put in, the dedication,
hmm
but it does seem like a misallocation of time and resources.
Yeah.
But what followed was the discussion about the framework. It wasn't annexation or it wasn't escalation. Like it was focused on Arctic security and expanded NATO cooperation and long-term posture. Because like we talked about yesterday, that like this could be a rare win-win in that it. And he said it it sounds belittling, but it is factual. He's like, it's just a big chunk of ice. And
hmm
only a time, there's 57,000 people on it, and it's about like a third the size of Canada. But most of it is ice. It's gigantic. But most people live in one tiny area, and they can't defend it. NATO doesn't have the money to do it, and it would help them to have us closer and have a vested interest in the land, especially if we're trying to build the Golden Dome at project that you know, Trump has submitted, which I do think is potentially generationally changing if the technology is viable for intercontinental ballistic missiles, because you know, the Iron Dome in Israel it has like three different layers to it, and some work for the rockets that Hezbollah shoots over. And so this is a much more complicated version of that, and so that remains to be seen. But like Denmark and Greenland, had rejected the idea that Greenland was, for sale, but they also reaffirmed Greenland's future has to rest on its own self-determination. And that's the real pivot
Yeah.
because any serious proposal from anybody, it only has legitimacy under very specific conditions. A binding resolution from the people of Greenland, a direct economic compensation, the long-term profit sharing from the resources developed from the land, and the guarantee of cultural autonomy and the absolute ability to say no without consequence. Those conditions separate the negotiation from the coercion. And again, I don't want to retread what we talked about yesterday, but there's a difference between choice and force. And we need to make sure that we thread that. But there's always going to be the idea that force is in the background. And because Greenland knows it, Denmark knows it, NATO knows it. If we decided to be imperialistic or totalitarian or just overly militaristic, 57,000 people on Greenland, the United States could take over in less time than it took to get Maduro. It's not that. So we're trying to go about it the right way. And, we don't want to take it. The question is whether the further discussions are allowed to exist, you know, as they currently are, not with the sphere of history or personality politics. And, you can't just veto the conversation entirely. And then progress was made in, even after the statement in Davos, like this, the severity of his words. I mean, he did talk. I mean, he was pointing at people and being like, "I don't want to look at me. You see your heads are down, but you know who you are." Um, and I think the phrase that he left with was, "If you work with us to make this happen, we'll be very grateful. If you say no, we'll remember."
Yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty foreboding. And in the case he laid out in front of it was relatively reasonable. I mean, he was historically inaccurate in saying that we gave back Greenland after World War II.
Yeah.
He said that in the sentence. We were protecting it during the war and utilizing it as a base. We never actually had any sort of like we didn't invade it and take it over and keep it. So that part was a little historically murky, but the overall, arching thing that he was saying was, this is an autonomous zone. We wanted to vote on it and have this be a part, but we've defended y'all, helped y'all, paid for the vast majority of NATO for decades. Historically, Greenland, I'll be speaking German, which, also it's a lot more nuanced than that without the Soviet Union and, the Chinese who kind of fought back against the Japanese and all. It's more complicated than that, and people do, the back-to-back World War chants thing, and people tend to overly simplify it, and I
Yeah.
understand that, but it is true that without American, flotillas to Britain during the Blitz, even before we were involved, they would have lost the war.
Yeah.
Most people wanted to negotiate with Hitler, and that's why Neville Chamberlain was ousted, and then Winston Churchill was the most hardline anti-Hitler and had been forever.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to get involved. We didn't want to get involved. And there's an interesting philosophical question as to had Japan never bombed Pearl Harbor, would we have just stuck to supplying arms and weapons?
That's a great question. And kind of on a tangent here, I love World War II history, and so does my brother. My brother collects military antiques. Um, I've always wondered whatever happened to Hitler's remains.
They supposedly burned them directly outside of the bunker, so that they could not be paraded through the streets like Mussolini's were.
Yep.
But there's also a chance, and it opens it up for he escaped to Argentina conspiracy theory and
Oh yeah.
sightings and things like that, like a vast majority of high ranking Nazi officials who weren't commandeered for the Nuremberg trials, but they were burned, and the Russians have the remains, and well, the Soviets had the remains, and when the Soviet Union fell, believe that they. I'll check back in on that, but I believe that when the Soviet Union fell, we did track them down, and I'm not sure
Like
what.
Hitler's ashes, like we track those down.
No, they burned it in like a field, so it wasn't like a crematorium that did a great job at it.
No.
Like it burned it, but the bones and skeleton and stuff were still there.
Yeah.
Um, there is pictures of it, but also a lot of those Soviet pictures were photoshopped,
Yeah.
like even before photoshopping was a thing. There's like a famous picture of a Soviet on a building in Berlin taking down the Nazi flag and putting up the Soviet flag, and it was highly edited because on his wrist he had like 10 watches that he had stolen from dead Germans, and they didn't want it to look like they were looting in this
Mm-hmm.
propaganda photo. So you have to take everything about that story with a grain of salt and
Yeah.
an understanding.
And Joseph Stalin, when he died in 1960, I think he died in 63, I believe. Or no, no. No, he died in 1953. 53.
Hmm.
Not 63. When he died, his body was put in that same tomb as Vladimir Lenin and like preserved. And then
Hmm.
in 1961, I believe they were like, get this dude out of here. And they took him and buried him along the old Berlin border, I believe. And that's where he is now. But yeah, Vladimir Lenin's been dead for over 100 years, and his body's still perfectly preserved, and that's just the craziest thing to think about.
Solid work by whoever, quality embalming.
Yeah, no kidding.
Um,
I don't know if they have to have him at a certain temperature in that chamber to keep him that way. Probably.
and I I have not been to pay homage to the resting in state dead corpse of Vladimir Lenin
No, neither have
yet.
I.
It's not really high on my bucket
It's
list
not
of.
high on mine either.
I mean, but now that you say it, if I was in St. Petersburg, I assume it's in Moscow. I don't know,
Yeah, he's in
but
some kind of big temple they built for him.
I- they they built a gigantic temple for socialism.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
I get it. I mean, but kind of back to the full loop around point of, the reason that, like, he was saying the request is just like, we're asking for a tiny piece of land that y'all don't use after everything that we have done over this long period of time. It seems like a pretty reasonable ask,
yeah,
and you also get a huge benefit of your own national security by us being there, as you always have. And you know, and a lot of the Europeans at Davos are sitting there and posturing as though I mean, Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, gave this speech that was, talking about, the middle countries banding together to not deal under the foot. There was no real plan to it. It was basically just saying we don't
yeah.
like how the power structure is, and all that stuff. And all the European countries are saying, at least outwardly, inwardly, I'm sure the smarter of the leaders are very well aware of what the score is and
Mm-hmm.
how it actually goes. But you have to at least posture in a way, because, like I was saying on Three Dudes, that when we revealed the F-22 Raptor in 2005, it was
Yeah.
the fifth generation fighter, really futuristic looking. It's really impressive. But what most people didn't know is that the first flight of that was in 1990 in September.
That's
So
crazy
the
to think.
development, do I?
That's crazy to think. Like it was around for 15 years before it was revealed.
Yeah. So so even if they started now in an effort to, band together to, fight against the American, what they view as, I guess, diplomatic imperialism. I mean, 'cause it's not. war-based imperialism or any of that, but they're so far behind because they haven't invested in it. I'll grant you that we have overly invested, um, but when it's called to bear, I mean, if you look at the operations in, Iran with the B-2 bombers and the bunker busters and the operation in Venezuela, it doesn't not work. I mean, it's why we don't have free healthcare, but it's then other people are going to find out. But you know, it almost feels in looking at these Davos, panel meetings that the countries are going to go to NATO and ask for U.S. funding to protect Greenland from a U.S. invasion. Like the circular logic is lost, and I don't know the motivation truly behind them escalating the Greenland thing to be such an unprecedented, massive, ridiculous thing. It's not like we want France. Give us France. There's 57,000 people. It's not even a sovereign nation. It's a protectorate that's, it like it's not a weird thing to be like, hey, y'all are, an autonomous territory of Denmark. What if you were an autonomous territory of the United States? I mean, and Denmark just subsidizes them. Like it's not a ridiculous conversation because it's fair. It's a monetary thing. We'd be like, we'll pay the 600 million that y'all are paying per year to Greenland and subsidizing half of their GDP. Y'all don't need to do it anymore. Like I don't see the benefit y'all have in it. It just the idea that I just think it's that Trump said it and he said it in the way that he says things that infuriates people that just made this relatively reasonable conversation to have come off as just insane. And it's not that.
Yeah.
But, I know we're coming up on the half hour, been on 15. We can get back and talk about the Jack Smith hearing and kind of give people a little bit of a refresher course on what led up to where we are. And we can go from there.
Absolutely. We'll be back.
This is Coach Tredaris Goff from Columbia Central High School football. You are listening to 101.7 WKOM in Columbia, Tennessee.
Hi, I'm Robert Rogers at Parks Motor Sales Buick GMC.
And I'm Michael Parks Lawrence at Parks Motor Sales Buick GMC.
Together, we're Mr. Bobby Parks' grandsons, and we run his dealership, and we are glad to be part of our local community.
Being family-owned and operated, we invest heavily in our community.
We do things like sports teams, schools, bands, you name it. We try to help everybody we can.
The reason why we do this is because we all love this community.
So come do business with us, your neighbors, at Parks Motor Sales in Columbia, Tennessee, right off Nashville Highway, or at parksmotorsales.com.
Let's talk custom design jewelry. Did you know Tillis Jewelry in downtown Columbia creates custom design jewelry and has been for over 30 years? From one-of-a-kind engagement rings to wedding bands and so much more. We want each piece to be as unique as you are and create a family heirloom for tomorrow. Call today and make an appointment with one of our designers. And just for calling, you will receive a free 30-minute consultation. Tillis Jewelry, creating custom jewelry proudly in Tennessee.
Hi, Jimmy here for Columbia Ace Hardware. Columbia Ace Hardware now carries Magnolia Home by Joanna Gaines paint. Now their premium quality and huge selection of colors will be right in your neighborhood. Along with the award-winning service and advice Columbia Ace has always provided for your paint projects. Around the block, what you need in stock, with people who know their paint. Columbia Ace, the helpful place.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks. Do you have trees that need trimming or removed? Do you have stumps that you want grounded? A1 Tree Trimming and Removal is a family-owned and operated business local to Columbia and Lewisburg. They also service surrounding Middle Tennessee. We are licensed and insured and provide free estimates. No job is too big, no tree is too small. Give old Luke a call or text Luke at 931-359-3113. Or you can check them out on Facebook and tell A1 Tree Removal that you heard this ad on the radio. If you love America, then you will love A1 Tree Removal.
You're not just a homeowner, you're also an ice maker that didn't read the job description owner. Fortunately, you've got heating and cooling built and tested to keep going. American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, built to a higher standard.
Call Davis Heating and Cooling at 931-388-2090 for all your home comfort needs. Davis Heating and Cooling is your local independent American Standard dealer and proudly serves the Murray County area. Find Davis Heating and Cooling online and on Facebook or call today, 388-2090.
Hey, this is Seth Moss at Tennessee Valley Equipment, a premier FAE PrimeTech, Bandit, and Surex dealer. We are your dealer for all of your land clearing and forestry mulching needs. We sell equipment, provide repair service, and parts along with a rental fleet of mulching equipment. We also offer mulching teeth, blades, and sharpening. Our number one priority is getting you up and running as quickly and affordable as possible. Tennessee Valley is located at 300 Santa Fe Pike in wonderful Columbia, Tennessee. Stop by or give us a call today at 931-981-9812.
This is Debbie Matthews with the Nashville Realty Group, and if you've been paying attention, you know the housing market has been tough, but rates are beginning to thaw. So if you're thinking about selling, the time to jump in is getting better every day. But if you're thinking about buying, and those interest rates are still a little bit too high, a good agent knows how to negotiate interest rate buydowns. And I'm a good agent, so call me, Debbie Matthews with Nashville Realty Group, 615-476-3224.
This is Hal Landers, owner of Landers Insurance Agency. We are an independent agency representing the famous Erie Insurance Group. Landers Insurance Agency has been committed to providing great rates and great service since 2002. Whether it's home and auto or business or life insurance, we've got you covered. 24/7 in-house claim service, we've got that too. Visit Landers Insurance at 514 North Garden Street, Columbia. Call us at 931-380-2003. Our website is landersinsuranceagency.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
This is Trip Stoltz with Columbia Ace Hardware. I love listening to 101.7 WKOM FM, Columbia, Tennessee.
Welcome back to the middle of it with Jeb Hart. That would be me. I'm here with Drake Pugh. How are you, buddy?
No, I'm good, Jeb. How are you?
I am doing fine, prepping and hoping that we get snow instead of ice. But
that's something I wanted to talk about actually with you.
Go
for
it.
They're saying it's going to be like the storm of the century is what everybody's saying, and my dad thinks it's all he thinks it's all a joke. He doesn't think it'll snow. I personally, I'm kind of, hey, like the name of the show, I'm in the middle of it right now. I'm not sure.
It looks, we're right on kind of the line between the area that's going to be heavy snow or potentially frozen rain, and snow is infinitely more enjoyable, fun, whimsical, and way less dangerous than than just freezing rain. So I'm hoping that it shifts over, but it's moved a ton. And I watched this meteorologist who used to work for FedEx online. Kind of he went through the way that it's shaping up, and the temperatures are dropping and the whole thing. So I'm keeping an eye on it because having two kids, having a snow day is awesome.
Oh yeah.
But having an ice day, significantly less whimsical.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when we had a bad ice storm come through Williamson and Murray County back in 2015, early 2015, and I remember there was a fatal car accident as a result of it. It was that we were out of school for a week and a half. It was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, there was some snow with it, but it was mainly ice, so I'm hoping it's just a snowstorm, personally. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Here we've moved, Murray County Public Schools has moved all of the Friday night games to tonight. So our game of the week and game day show is tonight. Yeah.
So preemptively thinking it's going to be coming Friday, not Saturday.
Yeah, they're thinking Friday nights tomorrow night's when it's going to come in. But yeah, all Murray County public sports and extracurricular activities from Friday to Monday have been canceled or postponed. So we were supposed to have a big game Saturday night as well, a game known as the McDonald's Shootout, which is between Spring Hill and Columbia. And that was supposed to be Saturday night at Spring Hill, and I don't know if it's not happening now on Saturday. I don't know if it's going to get postponed or if it's just going to be straight canceled, but it's not happening Saturday night.
Is that part of a league? Does it count for like league standings or division rankings, or is it exhibition?
I think division rankings. I'm not too sure. My colleague Landon Seacrest could tell more because he played in that game. He was the point guard for Spring Hill when he was in high school. He graduated in 2021. But, yeah, I'm definitely interested to see what this storm is going to do. I hadn't been sledding in a long time, so I definitely want to get out there and go sledding.
We know we live just a little bit south, so and a little bit higher up on.
Yeah.
I live on Lookout. We normally get about one a year.
Yeah, that's usually what we get.
Enough to do something with. But I mean, I grew up in Atlanta, and it was something called the Blizzard of '93.
Yep.
It was half an inch. But I did get, I mean, I remember it so clearly. I didn't have to go to school. I got to do like snow. And I remember it being a blizzard, like apocalyptic, like everything's going to get shut down. We'll never be able to get out. I come to find out later that it was half an inch of snow.
Yeah.
But that was the only time I ever had. I mean, I think I might have had one or two like ice rain days, but that was the only snow day I remember growing up. But I'm probably wrong on that. But when we were going into the break, we kind of wanted to give a debrief on the testimony that's coming today from Jack Smith, because it's kind of it's a big one in Washington. Jack Smith, the Jack Smith, is testifying in front of Congress.
Yep.
The guy that went after Donald Trump twice. Now, look, it's been well established nobody's above the law, and we can agree on that. But the way Smith handled these prosecutions did not come off as though it was motivated by justice. It looked like politics that was, dressed up in some legal robes.
Yeah.
So we can't forget that he dropped the indictments in 2023 that landed right, just so happened by an oopsie doopsie, right in the middle of a presidential campaign.
Yeah.
Then pushed for rushed trial dates, filed right under the wire. Everything about the nature of the prosecution felt strategic. And now he's under investigation by the U.S. Office Special Counsel.
Yep.
The actual, federal watchdog that enforces the Hatch Act. That's the law that says federal employees cannot use their jobs to influence elections. It's not a technicality. It's, a cornerstone of fair government.
Yeah.
And so leading up to it, you got to ask, what did Jack Smith do? He stepped into the most high-profile prosecution in modern history and timed it for maximum political impact.
Yeah.
And if that sounds familiar, because it should, that's not law enforcement. That is election interference.
Mm-hmm.
Senator, Tom Cotton called him out and said it pretty straightforwardly that Jack Smith used his office to target a political opponent. And
which
now,
is not cool.
Congress, they want answers.
Yeah.
And you got to remember that, Smith resigned right after Trump won in 2024. There were no more press conferences, no more filings, just gone.
Yeah.
So today we get to hear from him.
Yep.
And let me tell you, this isn't about being pro-Trump or anti-Trump.
Mm-hmm.
It should be about trust. trust in federal prosecutors acting like political operatives is something that, you need to have trust that justice isn't being twisted into campaign strategy. And, I think that having this on Front Street is important because if nothing comes from it, then I'll be very glad because then nothing would have gone wrong. But, sunlight shown on this, I think will be helpful because if Jack Smith used the law to tip an election, even if he thought he was on the right side or it wasn't technically illegal, he broke more than just, legal precedent.
Yeah.
He broke public faith. So, yeah, I got questions. And today, Jack Smith, I really hope he has the answers because the American people do deserve the truth. And I don't think this time they're going to let it slide because there have been, over the course of the past 2 years, the amount of things like we're so inundated with corruption, conspiracy, and it's easy to say something is a conspiracy and then a new thing comes up and then you go past it when there is something worth looking into and then the media eye goes elsewhere and we start to lose where we are in it and forget about it or go back. But it's, be it election interference or the prosecutions being politically motivated or, I mean, the list goes so long that we forget. And I just think that the answers are deserved and are worth asking. I mean, we barely talk about the auto pen thing anymore, or the fact that, we don't talk about the fact that one of the most highly monitored men on planet Earth from a medical standpoint had, stage 3 cancer and yet only found out about it after he was out of office. That seems like a cover up in and of itself outside of the cognitive decline that, has been well documented. I mean, the fact that that can go unmissed is pretty worth scrutiny, but then something else comes up. We bomb Iran or tariffs or what. I think we go way too fast in judgment and way too fast to move on, especially with a lot of these things that deserve the scrutiny, but they deserve proper scrutiny, not knee-jerk reactions. And I think that the Jack Smith thing, the people who are opposed to Trump, or they'll be opposed regardless of what it is, but they'll say that this is a political prosecution. And to a point, they would be right.
Yep.
Because the prosecution was based off of a political prosecution. There's no other way if it turns out to be what the allegations are. There's no other way to you can't just say I'm not going to prosecute somebody who politically prosecuted me because it'll be a political prosecution because if he did the thing by its very nature, it is inherently a political prosecution. If he did election interference. So it's using that as a crutch to say that this is wrong doesn't really work on its face, because by that you're just saying if they got away with it at the time, you're not allowed to come back and even address it. And that seems like a really bad precedent to start setting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really interested to see what he has to say. There's a lot of questions I would have about, the second in charge of the DOJ quitting their job to come work under him for less money and a less prestigious job.
Yeah.
In order to pursue this, the direction taken from higher above in order to make it go. Because I mean, the judicial, department, there's the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branches are supposed to operate separately. There are overlaps, obviously, but they can't. I mean, Letitia James and Fonnie Willis all campaigned on the idea that they would go after a singular individual. People campaign on like we'll be hard on crime or drugs or gangs or clean up the street. You can campaign on that, but campaigning on going after a singular political figure
Yeah.
is very much outside the norm. And we kind of glossed over that being pretty messed up. And then, you know, the felony counts is something that is still one of the weirder things to me because it's things that liberals justifiably, and I agree with them on, are always very against, which is uh, police charge stacking. So if you arrest somebody for something minor, I mean, let's say something middle-ish. They robbed a grocery store with an unloaded gun.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was never loaded, but it was never attempted murder. But they thought it was. You could say that it was robbery with a deadly weapon, intimidation, battery, assault. You can tack all of them as individual things and put them on top. The 34 counts that people continue to cite are, and I think most people just take that at face value. They're for falsifying business records, which was past the statute of limitations, but they opened it back up because they said that it was falsifying business records in the commission of another unlawful act, but they never said what unlawful act that was,
Yeah.
which is still the weirdest jury instructions I've ever heard. They gave them like three to pick from that they didn't have to prove. And then each one of the 34 counts was for the same thing, just multiple times that that's you can tell that there's a political version of that because no prosecutor on the planet, they never tried something like this before. They've tried things like this when they were like live. They've never worked around the statute of limitations to retroactively go in and try to jerry rig the way to open it up and then give people, a pick 'em for what the actual crime was at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that part is all kind of forward. You have to wonder, where the direction comes from. And I just think that the answers are, and I would be happy to be wrong. And I, to a point, hope I am, because the trust we've lost in medical institutions since COVID has been, detrimental. I don't want there to be a massive, a more intense loss of trust in the judicial system. I know it's not crazy high right now, but we have to establish trust in our country within our institutions. And if we find out the emperor is wearing no clothes and the sheriff is naked, the judge isn't wearing anything under the robe, there's going to be some problems. And I hope the shakeup it cleans it up, but it does not burn it down. Because there needs to be accountability in a lot of these things. And I hope we get to that point to where we can have that honest, open, like, this is what happened. We did it for this reason. I didn't think it was illegal, or no, I did it because I didn't want this. I mean, there's plenty of texts going back to the 2016 campaign about, like, again, we talked about it, the Steele dossier gets brought up from time to time, but the severity of that and like just how absolutely crazy it was, that was the number one story that led the news forever. And then once it was found out that it was completely made up and also funded by the opposition, we're just like, okay, we're not talking about that anymore. And we're not printing any retraction pieces. We're not going to downshift it all. We are just going to not talk about it anymore because we were wrong. And so accountability from our institutions does not just include federal institutions. It includes media organizations. If you're wrong in an opinion piece, fine.
Yeah.
That's it's your
It's your
opinion. You're
opinion.
wrong.
Exactly. We're all entitled to it.
Yes, and you shouldn't be strong armed to have a different opinion than you have.
No, not at all.
But if you're reporting something as a fact
Mm-hmm.
and you're wrong, there needs to be accountability, or at least I think the journalistic integrity to go back and just say, it would build so much more trust if they said, all right, we printed this, but this is the reason why we did. We had it from this source who we believed, and under the circumstances at the time, it was credible enough for us to print. It turned out not to be true. For that, we apologize. And should we be wrong in the future, we will also do the same. We always make every effort to be as accurate as we can, but in a ever moving world, sometimes mistakes are made. Reasonable thing, people would understand. People would be like, I get it. But when you refuse to take accountability for stating something as a fact that's not a fact, making assertions to motivations, making connections that don't exist on faulty information, and then just move on, and then your expectation is that the public is just going to believe you again, is not a way to build trust. And that's where these fractures start.
Yeah.
Is a lack of internal accountability. Just say you're wrong. It's okay. Everybody is.
Absolutely.
We're people.
We're all humans. No one's perfect.
Yeah.
Everybody makes mistakes. Every day.
I mean, in the previous show, I said, like U.S. I misstated that the U.S. had never, asked NATO for anything. And like, as I said, I realized, I was wrong, because they, for 9/11, they did, initiate Article 5. And immediately I was like, that's my bad. I misstated that, and that's on me.
Yeah.
And like, it's a lot easier to just say it than it is to try to cultivate false credibility through lies that you make up after the fact, or ignoring untruths.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's exhausting.
It is.
I don't know
exhausting.
how many plates you could spin.
No, I don't either. It's better just to, be like, hey, I was wrong. I messed up. It's on me. And then move on.
Yeah. And if people ask, and I didn't think for everybody else to ask, okay, why were you so wrong? And say, well, okay, well, this source who I've relied on in the past for these stories that proved themselves to be accurate, gave me a piece of information that I believed, and we ran with it. And a lot of other people extrapolated, and it was based on faulty foundation, and that's on us.
Yep.
Ta-da. And you do that for every time you're wrong, people will believe you when you're right. But you can't just, the amount of times people use the phrase gaslighting, and like, just, you can't gaslight the public. I don't like the use of the word, just because I feel like it's overused now, or at least misattributed.
I can say this. I know real gaslighting when I see it.
Yeah. If you just say, I never said that.
Yeah.
And there's a video of you saying that, and you're like, no, you're wrong. And I was like, the internet's like a thing. You know that, right?
I don't even know if that's gaslighting at that point. That's just being an idiot at that point.
I think for some people it might. It was Chris Cuomo did an interview with David Smith, and I think it was Patrick Bet-David, and he was talking about like his response during COVID, and like the things he said about ivermectin and all of this. And he was like, I never said that. And like on stage, it was a live event, and they pulled up all the things he said about like horse dewormer like people should be shamed, and at no point did he apologize. Did he say he was wrong? He was like, I was working off of what we had. But he didn't apologize.
It's like, but you're working off your head, but you still said what you said.
But also, what you had at the time was a very serious recognition that ivermectin is a Nobel Prize winning drug that is well utilized by people for a very long time, and not there is a horse version of it, sure, but it is not a horse dewormer. The one that they're taking is a pill.
Yeah.
It is for people, and it literally won the Nobel freaking prize for how helpful it is. So like you knew that at the time.
Absolutely.
So that you apologize for the political framing with which you reshape a story.
Yeah.
That deserves apology. If you said something that was, as the the CDC has recently told us, insert thing here, fine. That's not an opinion. That's not you reframing a fact. That's you reporting what was told to you. If they're wrong, then you don't have to apologize. You just reported what was told.
Yeah, exactly.
But far too often, the game of telephone between the facts that were reported gets put through like the sieve of bias. And I think it's unreasonable to think that people will not frame things through their own perspective or their own lens. People, that's humanity.
Yeah.
You do it. There's things you look at, there's things you choose not to, there's things that you highlight that you dislike in order to put them there. There's things that you choose not to talk about because they frame your position in a worse light.
Yeah.
It's just bias that is existing in the world. You have it.
Exactly.
Don't sit there and pretend as though you don't. I wish that every single news anchor had to have like a little thing next to their name that said when like the same thing, like when a senator comes on news, it says like D, Maryland, or R, Texas. It just shows their affiliation or their leaning, so like you can understand the framing. In it's a ridiculous ask. I know they're not going to do it, but like so you can at least view it through the proper prism. Some of them are straightforward enough. I know that every single person on MSNBC has a D next to their name, and almost every single person on Fox, except for the ones who are say they're the Democratic side or Republicans. CNN's the one that bothers me because they pretend that they're not biased. It's one thing to be biased and do it. That's totally fine.
Exactly.
I mean, the Young Turks are very left. Totally got it. Ben Shapiro's very right. Totally got it. When I can look at that, I can see it through the prism of their leanings. But when you pretend that you are not and you are, that's where credibility just goes to absolutely die. And you can't expect people to keep believing you when you just keep being wrong all the time and then saying you're not biased about it. It's an unreasonable expectation for people.
Yeah. You got to have realistic expectations for folks. I mean, you can't just go around doing all that stuff.
And and I'm hoping it's better, and I hope that the coverage of. I'm interested to see what the coverage of the Jack Smith stuff today is. I'll be watching it because I have no idea what he's going to say.
Yeah.
The general idea as to some of the questions he'll be asked, but I don't know what all will be unveiled. He isn't an attorney who was appointed a special prosecutor, so he certainly knows his way around a courtroom and the ability to not answer questions at the same time.
Yeah.
So, I feel like there'll be a lot of obfuscation, but I'm interested to see what the fallout is and how it's covered. So when we get back on Monday, we will go over that. And I'm sure in this crazy world we live in, I'm sure something else would have transpired that is news and noteworthy. But until then, I appreciate y'all being in the middle of it with me, and look forward to seeing y'all back on Monday.
Have a good one, Jeb.
All right.
Thank
same
y'all,
to
everybody.
you.